Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I hope you all had a lovely Easter break. Today's topic is Personalised Freight Solutions by Rebecca Young. So today you are listening in using your computer speaker system by default. You will have the opportunity to submit questions to Rebecca by typing them into the questions pane on the control panel. Now, she's happy to answer questions throughout the presentation. However, any unanswered questions, we will address these at the end of the session during the Q&A session. Today's webinar is proudly sponsored by Entity Brands, home to 13 of the world's largest uniform brands, including Nike and Port Authority. The power of the brands is in your hands at entitybrands.com.au. Now, I'll give you a brief introduction on today's presentation. Personalised Freight Solutions have been premium freight partners of APPA since 2017. They're an international freight forwarding company facilitating the movement of cargo globally. Their services include import and export, sea and air freight, border clearances, and on-ground trucking at both origin and destination. I will hand this over to Rebecca now.
Thanks, Ida, and welcome everybody. Today's presentation, I'm going to go through currently where the world of international freight is at. As some of you listening in may realise, the world of international freight is a little tricky right now, and we can look at where everything currently sits. I can advise that it's a forever changing situation, as a lot of things are in the world at the moment. So what may be today may not be tomorrow, and I'm going to use the APPA group page to try and keep you guys as updated as possible. But as at today, this is where things currently sit for you. So sea freight, the biggest effect that was put on sea freight very early on in the piece, and everybody out there probably understands when I say that the world of international freight has been dealing with COVID-19 since really the start of February, if not late January. China did not reopen after Chinese New Year, which, I mean, Chinese New Year is such a challenging time for everybody to maneuver as it is, and to not reopen after that for up to 4 weeks has really impacted everybody heavily. So the biggest effect from that stage was a 14-day quarantine period on vessels arriving into the country. So what that meant was that schedules needed to change, shipping schedules needed to change, where if you had a vessel leaving Shanghai coming straight to Brisbane, the transit time on that is going to be 11, 12 days. Now, shipping lines aren't going to just anchor up outside of Brisbane, wait a couple of days and then come in. It's a waste of their money. So what a lot of them made the move to do is to actually leave the last port of China and come around to Melbourne, proceed to Sydney, then to Brisbane. So, you know, the major effects for you guys is that what was a quick sailing, say Shanghai to Brisbane, and I'm just picking on that particular schedule for now, sees that blown out to maybe a 20-day transit. The reason that shipping lines had to make that move with the 14-day quarantine period is quarantine officers and pilots board vessels prior to them berthing in port. So to keep them safe, it was recommended that the vessel waited 14 days for anybody from Australia to board, and they would run the applicable reporting that they need to do as they move into our waters. So that's number one. And if you're worried about the changing schedules, please reach out and we can give some advice around that, or speak to your current providers. The next biggest thing that has happened affecting our Sydney importers and exporters is that Hutchinson's Port at Port Botany is closed indefinitely. And this is because of confirmed cases of coronavirus on the wharf, and the MUA getting involved with believing that Hutchinson's weren't providing a safe environment for the workers on the wharf there. So as a result, vessels have had to be moved to DP World, and only 2 wharfs are operational in Sydney right now. We're seeing some delays in availability and obviously some berthing congestion, which nobody needs right now. The other things that you may see because of that is change in infrastructure fees. Hutchinson Port is one of the cheaper ports in Sydney. DP World is the most expensive, and Patrick's is between those 2. So you may see on your invoices a change in infrastructure fees. It will be slight, like it won't be a lot, but there will be a change there. Your freight forwarder may choose not to pass them on to you, but that is maybe one to look out for. The other thing that may happen is lack of slots. So when your transport company or your freight forwarder or whoever it is that goes in to pick your containers up from the wharf need to make a time slot with the wharf. With the reduced capacity, we may see that slot times are reduced. We find the best way to get around that is actually to have your transport company or your freight forwarder ring the port directly and make a plea to get a slot in place. Quite often they will do that if a personal reach out is done. So if a freight forwarder is telling you or a transport company is telling you they can't get a slot, that is a suggestion to actually reach out with a phone call. Our next big effect is 3 major shipping lines, being One, Maersk, and MSC, have all withdrawn the CAE service from China to Australia. Now, the CAE service was routed Xiamen, Nansha, which is Shanghai, Hong Kong, Yantian, Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane. So that covers off some of the pretty main ports up there. It doesn't mean those ports are unable, like you're not able to load there to come to Australia anymore. It just means a reduced capacity in volumes that we're able to access as freight forwarders to get your cargo out of China. Shipping lines will start to pull these reduced trades to try and get their vessels as full as possible. At the moment, the vessels still aren't full. They won't want to get into a price bidding war at this stage. They will want to try and keep everyone's vessels as full as possible so that the freight rates don't fall to an unachievable level. Everything kind of stays on par during peak season and slack season. And of course, all of those traditional peak season and slack season will now be very upset by this situation with COVID-19. The last one that I just want to mention in regards to sea freight is Hong Kong have stopped accepting DGs temporarily due to a backlog in LCL. So LCL is what we call cargo that's consolidated. So if you've got 1 or 2 boxes or 1 or 2 pallets or 100 boxes, whatever the case may be, you don't have your own full container and you have to share that container, there is some limitations in regards to DGs out of Hong Kong. We are seeing ourselves consolidated still taking DGs. It may have to come out of more North China than South China though. But again, we'll communicate to the APPA community once that situation has changed. Air freight. Air freight has been significantly impacted by this situation. And the fact is that when passenger flights were grounded, we lost 96% of freight capacity because the majority of freight globally travels in passenger planes, in the belly of a passenger plane. And the reason why consolidators or airlines can keep freight prices lower on passenger planes is because the passengers pay for the flight, essentially, and the freight is simply cream on top of that flight. So when passenger flights were cancelled, that automatically meant that the only options to carry freight were freighter services, so aircraft that are specifically designed to only carry freight. And traditionally, freighters have always come with a higher price tag. So we have a reduced volume, we have an increase in price, and of course, demand equals competition. Therefore, we have seen over the weeks the prices climb higher and higher and higher. At the moment, all major hubs, Europe, China, and USA, are experiencing delays, and consolidators have started chartering their own services. And again, in the APPA Facebook group, I have been posting flight options where we see charter services being initiated by consolidators, and I'll continue to do that. If you're specifically looking for a route and you're not too sure whether you have any options on that route, please let us know. We can get some information for you. And then the last thing that has been affected in regards to air freight is DHL have introduced an emergency surcharge. It's quite a hefty surcharge. It will be dependent on the type of contract you hold with DHL. We have seen an increase anywhere between $4 a shipment right up to $350 a shipment. So it all depends on where you're coming from and what weight your cargo is. In saying that, DHL have in China refused to, well, I shouldn't say refuse, but have changed operationally to only collect basically one carton at a time in some regions, and they dictate that that carton should be 20 kilos or less. And if it isn't, you will get delays. We've seen huge backlogs in Hong Kong. I was tracking a DHL shipment for a customer yesterday who was a little bit perplexed by the whole situation, and her cargo out of Indonesia, so it went from Bali to Singapore to Hong Kong to Melbourne, it actually sat in Hong Kong for 10 days. And that was only one carton. So you guys might be experiencing, if you ship 10 cartons, you're only receiving 2 or 3 at a time. And that's how they're moving things around. The emergency surcharge was to stop this kind of operational strain. However, it would seem that it hasn't, and they do have a lot of strain on their system right now. Okay, so that's a quick snapshot of where the industry's at. If you are wondering where your cargo is or what schedules you can access, I am going to, a little later on in the presentation, show you some resources you guys can be using. And of course, information's free from PSS with no obligation. So you can reach out to myself or Amanda at any stage, and I'll give you our contact details towards the end. A big one that I have been seeing you guys ask about on Facebook is your PPE. So a lot of APPA guys have diversified their services and offering the likes of face masks and sanitizer. So I thought this was a really good opportunity to run through where all of this currently sits. Now, just like the ever-changing world of the movement of freight, border clearance is ever-changing as well. So again, this is where everything is at now. That doesn't mean in 24 hours time, this stuff might not change. And again, we will communicate if there is changes to where everything is at right now. So Let's start with face masks and gowns, because believe it or not, I know there's a lot of words here, and bear with me, guys. I tried to make these slides as simple as possible, but there is a lot of information on this stuff coming through. So the face masks and gowns are pretty simple in the way we need to handle these coming through our borders. And that's as simple as what you see on screen here. If it is a medical grade face mask or gown, there is no need to register with TGA, so the Therapeutical Goods Act. There is a website that if you do need to register, I can give to people, and the process of how you do that. That if you are importing surgical grade masks or gowns, you do need to register and follow the TGA guidelines for surgical grade face masks and gowns. And IDA will make this information available to everyone who's registered today. So if you're not getting down all of this information, it will be available to you. It will be sent to you after the webinar today. So it's pretty self-explanatory. Medical grade, and I can speak from experience, we're getting medical grade face masks through our borders quite easily. As long as documentation from origin is being met, then we're having no issues with it as at today. We've just literally cleared a lot this morning through, and there was no problems. I'll talk about documentations in the preceding slides, but right now I'll move into border clearance for hand sanitizer. And again, there is a lot here, guys. So as at the 28th of March, specified hand sanitizer formulations were excluded from TGA regulations, as long as they met particular ingredients and particular quantities in the final formulation. And I do have that information for you in these slides, so you can have a look at that in your own time. And basically TGA, the association, has acknowledged that they need to facilitate urgent supply into the country. And as you're all kind of seeing through the media, we are starting to manufacture a lot of hand sanitizer here on shore now as well. So, but for those importing, as long as these set things are followed, getting the goods across our borders should be pretty hassle-free, and no registration with TGA needed. So again, just like with the face masks and the gowns where we have medical grade and surgical grade, hand sanitizers are the same. And they are grouped into two categories: cosmetics or therapeutic goods. I've listed here what dictates what. So cosmetic hand sanitizers are those that are have claimed to limit to general low-level activity against bacteria or germs. So basically it says on the packaging, it'll kill 99.9% of germs. In regards to the latter of those two being therapeutic goods, that's when the claim to kill specific organisms come into play and come down to where these sanitizers are going to be used. So are they going to be used by your kids as they run out the door to school and as they come back in from school when they get back there? Or are these sanitizers going into clinics, hospitals, aged care, and the list goes on? So as you can see, there is a lot to that, but when you are sourcing your product with your supplier, it's important that you establish who your customer is going to be for these hand sanitizers, what the ingredients are, and what your labeling is going to be. And again, if you are not sure, reach out to your customs broker or your account manager as a window to your customs broker and run through this stuff. It is better to do that at sourcing stage, before you pay for all the money, get it here into the country, and realize there's an extra step that needs to be taken in the border clearance process. So here I've listed out what the World Health Organization has dictated hand sanitizer must contain. And again, you guys can reference this in your own time, and also in regards to your labeling of your sanitizer. If you're not doing labeling specific for branding, say we were doing a Personalised Freight Solutions branded hand sanitizer, if you're going to be selling it direct from the supplier, they should be able to give you a copy of what their labeling will specify. You can reference this information to that labeling, and again, run it by your customs broker so that they can have a quick second eye over it, so that when your goods get to our borders, they can be cleared through without any dramas. I know a lot of this gear, like your face masks and your hand sanitizers, are time critical. You guys need to get them to your customers as quickly as possible. And for those who are bringing in bulk hand sanitizer via sea freight, you have the time to make sure that this all gets covered off on before the vessel arrives into the country, and you have X amount of 44 containers that you don't know what to do with. It is better to run this stuff by your broker sooner rather than later. So in regards to documentation, in regards to export, I refer to export out of China. Now, when you do your sourcing, if it is a new factory you are dealing with, ensure they give you the MSDS in the first instance, so that's your material safety data sheet. Your freight forwarder will also need your MSDS to quote. So don't go to your freight forwarder without your MSDS, because you're just going to get asked for it anyway. The other two key pieces is the certification for sale, transport of chemical goods and dangerous goods packing certificate. Those two pieces of documentation might not mean much to really any of us, but if they have those in China, it means they're a reputable supplier of this gear. And that's the important thing. If you can export out of China with the MSDS and the other two documents, it should be relatively easy to bring the cargo across our borders into our country. Now, I've just put a side note in, and I've added this late to the piece, but as at April 10, and because of the long weekend, this was a bit delayed in even getting to us, that medical related items will be inspected to assure the quality of the exported goods out of China. So as you can see, China are doing a lot to not even let PPE, medical equipment and items leave their country without there being some sort of quality assurance from the government's point of view. So, but what that means for you guys as importers of this stuff, you may expect some delays on your shipment. I would be talking to your freight forwarders now to ensure that they're across these inspections, to ensure that you stick to your schedules. On an import side of things, there is no, other than registration with TGA, if that's what you have to do, if that's what the item dictates. In regards to our customs, there is no special requirements, as long as you've got your bill of lading, your commercial invoice, your packing list, and for sea freight, your packing declaration, and in majority of cases for China, your chapter or your certificate of origin, you will be able to clear it into the country. As an extra precautionary step, we've actually done a manufacturer's declaration that we suggest to our clients to have your suppliers or your factories fill out. Like I said, just as an extra precaution, we can give anybody who contacts us a copy of that manufacturer's declaration. I put a really loose wording up on the Facebook group page as well, but I have done that up in a document that you can send off, and that basically says to your suppliers declaring to you that they have been making the sanitizer, the face masks, the gowns, whatever the case may be, for a certain amount of time, and that you've done your due diligence around buying these products. Again, that's not for border force or for customs clearance or quarantine clearance. That is so that you know you're not going to run into any problems with the cargo you're importing. So reach out to us. I can get that for you. We're also going that one step further and actually asking our importers to declare that they've done their due diligence, and that's to protect our brokers. Okay, so that was a lot. That's all the PPE gear. Again, you can go back on these slides. You can have a look at that information. If it raises any questions specific to your company, please let us know. We can clarify anything in there. And again, if there's any changes, we'll certainly let the association know so that you guys can know about that. The other thing I wanted to do today on this webinar is to just run through a quick ways you can actually do a freight health check within your business. As a business owner myself, I know in this economic climate that it is important to ensure that we are spending wisely, that we're reducing overheads as much as possible. We also know at Personalised Freight Solutions that if we can reduce your per unit costs coming into your company, that means more profit in your back pocket. So I've come up with 3 suggestions in ways you can start looking for savings. And what I will say is that is not necessarily to go shopping around. Yes, of course, PFS would love to quote on everybody's freight. That goes without saying. However, it would be irresponsible for me to sit here and not tell you guys that if you've got a trusted freight forwarder, someone you've been working with some time now, loyalty can actually pay off. It would be my suggestion that in the first instance, you start to look around these 3 things to see if there's any savings with your current service provider. Number 1 being your documentation. Are you still working on original documents? And if you are, and I know that some people that I've discussed this with have said, oh, well, that's what the factory wants to do. You know, we've done it that way for 10 years now. It's hard to change it, you know. And I would agree, change is hard. Look at us all now, working from home, majority of us working from home, reduced hours, embracing technology like Zoom. It is hard to change. Changing the way you do your documentation with your factories, especially if you've only got 1 or 2 or even 3 factories you work with. Make the change now, it will save you money. Okay, it might only save you, say, US $50 to $75 a shipment in getting documents couriered down from China, but it is a saving, and all savings is what we need right now. So the way to go about that, if you are still dealing with originals, ask your factory to simply email you scanned copies of your documents and then telex release the original bill back to either the freight forwarder in China or the shipping line, depending on how your shipments are set up. Again, if you're a little unsure about the wording around all of that, contact myself, contact Amanda, and we'll write the email for you, because it is a good habit to get into and it will save you money. The second point we list out here is before you go shopping around, if you are doing, I kind of put if you're doing 2 to 5 containers a week, but in the current climate, if you're doing 2 to 5 containers a month, go back to your current service provider and ask them, hey guys, we're doing this type of volume with you, and we've been doing this type of volume with you for X amount of years. On that basis, are you prepared to give us any discounts moving forward? The best thing you could do is have your facts when you're doing this. So volumes in the past 12 months, your expected volumes over the next 12 months, and your total annual spend with your freight forwarder. I know it's hard to believe, but some freight forwarders don't even take into consideration these types of things on a day-to-day basis. A lot of freight forwarders work day in, day out, shipment in, shipment out. If you are not with a big company like the likes of, say, Shankers, it may be more realized the value that you bring to a company. And you will certainly know if you're with a big company, the likes of Shankers, because you will be in an account managed process. If you ring in on a 1300 number, you don't have an assigned account manager to you, chances are you're not spending enough. It's at that point in time that perhaps a smaller company with a more personalized service may be more suited to your business at this time. And that's where you may be going to get more savings around your business because it's valued more by a smaller business. But certainly start with communicating to your current service provider all the facts. Even if you're saving $50 a container, at the moment, a saving is a saving. When things start to recover, if anyone wants some pointers on actually how to negotiate on the basis of volumes, I can give you some advice around that. Volume contract negotiation generally happens back in February. So it's at that time I suggest you go to your freight forwarders and say, you know, this next 12 months, we expect we'll be doing, let's say, 10 containers a month. What can you do with us to lock in prices for the next 12 months? Freight forwarders have that capabilities with the shipping lines. It's just not known. Chances are, if you're with a bigger freight forwarder, they had already negotiated contracts back in February and they charge you on the basis of spot rates. So there is going to be room to give you a discount. I would suggest just asking. And at the end of the day, if they come back with no discounts for you, you're not feeling valued, maybe then it's time to start having a look around to see whether there is some better deals out there for you. And that pains me to say, but because I believe loyalty should breed a working relationship where your freight forwarder should offer you at least something, but see how you go with that. The last thing that I recommend there is transit times. So it's a little bit difficult at the moment in this market with transit times and sea freight, certainly, and air freight with limited services. I mean, most people are just taking what they can get right now. But don't forget that when your cargo reaches our shores, there's a domestic move that has to happen on it as well. And what we do see is different services will dictate different rates. So for example, if you're based in Toowoomba and your sea freight comes into Brisbane, some freight forwarders will put it on a direct drive from the container freight station straight up the hill, as an example. There may be some savings there that the likes of Toll or TNT or there's other services out there that maybe take overnight, but will give you a significant saving. Now, your freight forwarder should be thinking on your behalf at this time to try and make those savings for you. However, again, depending on what company you are with, it may take you to actually reach out and say, is there something better you can be doing on my domestic transport right now? So that's all the areas that I recommend to start with, and see whether you can find those little bits of savings here and there, especially in this climate. In regards to working with your current freight forwarder, communication is key. So question the process that is currently happening and see whether any changes can be made to save you some money. Because potentially that will give you a better outcome than spending a lot of time shopping around. I'm not saying that don't do that. All I'm saying is give your current service provider the opportunity. If you get the outcome you want there, you've actually not created a false economy for yourself. You've stopped there, you've had the saving, and you can get on with doing what you guys need to do and selling your product and servicing your clients. However, if you're not being heard by your current provider, go out to the market, because now is the time. Freight forwarders are just like everybody else. You know, their volumes have dropped. They will be hungry for work. It's time for you guys to think about that and potentially make some changes where needed. All right, I promised you some useful resources, which I list up here. And the first one there is the World Customs Organization. And that is all of the ever-changing world of border clearances, and they kind of dictate all that medical equipment stuff. So jump on there. There's New Zealand information on there for any New Zealand members looking for information. The second one I have is quarantine and basically documentation requirements around templates. And lastly there, we've got the air freight tracking and sea freight tracking. Those two sites are generic sites, so you can put in your airway bill number. Now that airway bill number can't just be your house airway bill, that needs to be the airline's airway bill number. And that will, if you say track direct, will take you to say China Southern's website where you can track your cargo. And just to mention, China Southern is one of the ones that are currently got pretty regular flights out of China. Sea freight tracking, you will need your container number. Again, it will likely take you to the shipping line's website, and each shipping line has their own tracking systems. If you cannot find what shipping line you're meant to be going to, please reach out to us. We'll give you some information around that. But basically, the letters in your container number will dictate what shipping line you're meant to be going to. But anyway, there's some generic resources for you that you might like to try out. What I'd like to say and leave you guys with this at the moment is knowledge is power. We're all feeling slightly out of control in our lives. And if you've got kids, you're probably feeling as overwhelmed as I am right now, with school going back and homeschooling, running our businesses, trying to keep our clients happy. It's all feeling a little bit out of control. The information and the resources that we've given you here today will hopefully give you a little bit more control over your freight movement. Make your freight forwarder and your customs brokers work harder for you right now. Everybody needs to support one another. And yes, freight forwarders are the necessary evil in your business. However, try and flip that around and make them a good resource for your business. I just reiterate there that all shipping lines have their own tracking. I have put a lot of those in one of my international freight updates, but again, if there's anything missing from there or you're just not quite sure which shipping line to go to, let me know. And of course, DHL has tracking. Just take your con note number, whack it into the DHL site, it'll tell you where it is, and pick up the phone to them if you need to. And if you really cannot get anywhere with them or with information, please let us know. And of course, our website has a lot of these links I've mentioned today on each of our sea freight, air freight, courier pages that you can go on there. You can also access our social medias and our updates, our blogs from our website, because again, in this climate, we want you guys to have control over what you're doing, because that's going to make your businesses even better. And it's going to help us all succeed together, because if you guys don't have customers and you guys aren't buying from overseas, we actually don't have a business. So whatever we can do to help, please let us know. This is how you get in touch with PFS. You guys as APPA members actually have a free freight health check with us if you have not done that. If you don't have the time because of working in your business and on your business to assess what's going on with your international freight, get in touch. We can do an in-depth health check specific to your business. That is free of charge. It is no obligation. In fact, I've run health checks for members where I've actually told them to stay put. There is no advantage in changing anything right now. They're getting the best deal they're going to get. And sometimes just that peace of mind is all we really need right now. You guys have an APPA account manager. For those who don't know, that's Amanda. I've put her contact details up there. She can be contacted anytime. Amanda comes from the world of promo. She actually has worked within a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot of, but a couple for members' businesses. So she's got a experience from the flip side. She knows what you guys are on about and can speak to you on that level. And with that, I've done a lot of talking, and I appreciate your attendance to the webinar today. I really hope that if you don't get information in what I've put in there today, that at least we have opened up the lines of communication and let you know that we're here to help. So if you have any questions, if not today, moving forward into the future, we're very contactable. Just let us know how we can help, and we'll get your questions answered.
For that fantastic and informative presentation. At the moment, we don't have any questions. However, as Rebecca just mentioned, you can either contact herself or Amanda in regards to either the presentation or actually, you know what? One question's just popped through. It was just a thank you. So Nick Lambert sends his thanks. That's lovely. Thank you for that, Nick.
Thanks, Nick.
So as mentioned, if you have any questions, please contact Amanda as our account manager, or any questions in relation to the presentation, feel free to contact Rebecca. Otherwise, I will send out a copy of the recorded link tomorrow along with the PowerPoint presentation, and you'll be able to review these at your own convenience. So on behalf of Rebecca and APPA, we would like to thank you for joining us today, and I hope you all have a lovely afternoon. Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you.